Hi, my name is Will Booz, and I'm really excited to show you this chord system. This is my master class on chord theory, and I've taught it to so many kids, so many adults. It will show you every position, every chord, on every set of strings, in every inversion, and including every extension. Now, if you don't know what those names are yet, and that's confusing, then don't worry, because I will address every single one of those details. And so, before we begin, I want us to tune so that we can make sure that we're on the same page. And if at any point any of this need to be slowed down, you can go and review whatever it is I'm going over. There's going to be a lot of information, and we're going to try to go through it as quickly as possible. I'm really happy to give this to you, and I'm thankful that you're here to want to learn this from me. So, we're going to tune. So here's E. A. D. G. B. E. Now, before we go into the chords, I want to say a little bit about technique. In order for you to play all of these chords, you have to have a very, very careful hand in your position and how you're holding the neck. You want your thumb dropped down to the back of the neck to where you can't see it if somebody was looking straight at the neck this way. That means that your hand will have room under here so that you can spread out everywhere. Because there's chords like this, that you need all of that room for. And there are chords like this that you are going to need as much space as you can give. And I've seen a lot of people walk bass lines with their thumb, and that's cool. And everything that I'm telling you is a rule, and rules are there for a reason, and you're allowed to break rules. In number theory, we have a system set up, but in order to break the rules, you have to know what those rules are. We have a system of counting notes in a scale. Now, we have the major scale, and the major scale in A is A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and A. In the chromatic scale, we have every note, every half step. We have A, B flat, B, C, D flat, D, E flat, E, F, G flat, G, A flat, A. You can call the notes sharps or flats depending on what key you're in and what direction you're moving. But we're not going to have to deal with that right now. Right now, we're going to assign numbers to those notes. On the guitar, we have frets, and these frets have patterns. And with these patterns, you can play the same thing anywhere on the guitar. What applies here is the same rules and everything that applies up here. And so when you learn this system in one position, you can apply it to every position. So with the major scale, we're going to go back through it again, and we're going to call them numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1 again. When we go chromatically, you have numbers as well. You have all the in-between notes. You have 1, 7, and you'll have flat 7, 6, flat 6, then 5, flat 5, 4, 3, flat 3, 2, flat 2, 1. Those numbers are going to be what we use to spell out all of these chords. So we're going to start with the A major chord. Right here, we've got root, fifth, root, third with your middle finger, and then finally the fifth and the root on the last two strings. And my finger is barring the whole fifth fret. The next chord that we're going to have is major 7 chord. Now what I did was, we had a fifth right here. I took that note out and I'm muting that string with my index finger over here. This finger is fretting the 5th fret, and it is arced so that you won't hear this string when you ring it. Then, where the octave was, I moved down and I added the 7th note in the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's the 7th note, 3rd, the 5th. I'm going to invert my ring finger and my middle finger, and this is going to be the dominant chord. This is A dominant 7, or 8 flat 7. And I'm going to invert my index finger and my middle finger, and this is going to be A major 6. And then finally, the last chord, keep the same finger position, but move my index finger back 1 fret, and you're going to have A major flat 6. Okay? So we're going to run through that first set of chords again. We got major, major 7, dominant 7, major 6, major flat 6. Now the only thing that's changing is this note walking down all the way. All of these notes stay exactly the same. The next set of chords is all of the minor chords. We got minor, minor major 7, minor 7, minor natural 6, and minor 6. The same thing is happening. You have an A minor chord, and then chromatic line walking down that one set of strings. That makes different chord names, and I want to take this time to say this. This is not how you're going to end up using these chords. These chords fit in music in different places. This is a way to memorize it, and that way you have a good working knowledge of what it is that you're leaving out or not leaving out. And when you do it this way, you see that you're covering all of your bases. Later on, I'm going to go through showing you how to use these chords in real life situations. The only time that anybody really ever plays these kind of chords in this order is when they're playing like something by the Beatles. You know, we've heard that before, and you've heard but other than that, there's not really a whole lot of songs that aren't going to sound just like Something or Stairway to Heaven that have those kind of movements. And so this is just a way to memorize it. Once you get this whole system down, then you take it and you apply it to all of the different styles of music that you play. So we got minor, minor major 7, minor 7, minor natural 6, minor 6. Now we're going to go on to the next set of strings. You got a D chord, and then here's the octave, and we're going to walk down D major, D major 7, D dominant 7, and I'm getting that dominant note by borrowing my index finger. D major 6, D major flat 6. And we got the minor chords. Here's your D minor chord, minor major 7, minor 7, minor natural 6, and finally minor 6. Next set of strings is G. This is the same chord as this, just in the next octave. You have major, major 7, dominant 7, major 6, major flat 6, minor, and you'll see this looks just like a D minor chord. Your index finger is operating like the nut of your guitar. D minor major 7, D minor 7, D minor natural 6, D minor 6. We're going to go back to the top here, and we're going to go through all of those same chords with the third and the bass. What that means is, right now we've been putting only the root notes in all of those bass chords. So, we have a lot more options than that. You don't have to voice a chord with just the root and the bass. Those chords sound good, but they're all the same voicing pretty much. And so the way that we can add color, just the same way that a piano player would voice chords, when you see a piano player move around, he's not jumping around most of the time. He's walking in different directions to get a linear motion going in the music, to connect the chords so that they sound like they're speaking and flowing and not just blocking. So, the way that we can do that is by changing the bass note. So you have 1, 2, 3. We're going to put that note in the bass, and this power chord right here, we're going to put right here. So 1, 2, 3. This is A major with the third in the bass, A major 7 over 3, A dominant 7 over 3, A major 6 over 3, and A major flat 6 over 3, or C sharp. If you're calling it letters, the fraction will look like A over C sharp. If you're calling it numbers, it'll look like 1 over 3. So, major over 3, major 7 over 3, dominant 7 over 3, major 6 over 3, major flat 6 over 3. Now we're going to do those same chords by flatting the third and making it a minor chord. When you have a major chord, you have 1, 2, 3. That 3 defines whether or not the chord is major or minor. When you flat the third, it becomes minor. The distance from the root to the third goes from 2 whole steps to a step and a half. So here's our minor chord: A minor with the third in the bass, minor major 7 with the third in the bass, minor 7 with the third in the bass, minor natural 6 with the third in the bass, minor 6 with the third in the bass. And as you see, some of these chords are starting to have a lot of color in them. This is a very mature chord to be able to use and can allow you to make your guitar part stand out. You can make parts by using chords like this. So you can really get creative there, and there's a lot of awesome chords that we're going to touch on. So the next set of strings, you're going to do the same thing. 1, 2, 3. Major, major 7, flat 7 with the third in the bass, major 6, That's pretty much an impossible chord that you won't have to voice. We've got the major chords, the minor chords. You're going to take that third and flat it, make it a minor chord. Starting to sound like music. That's starting to sound like a really nice color to be able to use. So the next set of strings is the G chord. Same thing, we're going to put the third in the bass. 1, 2, 3. Major. Major 7. Dominant 7. Major 6. Major flat 6 with the third in the bass. Now we have that same chord. We're going to flat the third and get all the minor chords. Minor with the third in the bass. Minor major 7 with the third in the bass. Minor 7 with the third in the bass, which is really, because of the way it's voiced, looks just like a major chord. But that's still what it is. If you were playing this over this chord, which is what it's implying, you've got the third in the bass, and so even though you can't hear the bass note, if a bass player was playing that, that would be the chord that you're playing. Minor natural 6, minor 6. All right, so on the last section, we went through and played every major and minor chord on every set of strings with the root in the bass and the third in the bass, major and minor third. This next set of chords that I'm going to go over with you is all of the other bass notes that you can add. Now sometimes changing the bass note for some chords sounds good. Sometimes when you add a particular note that is not in key, it can sound a little strange. For instance, let's take A major. When you add the flat 2, so here's 1, 2, flat it, it's flat 2, it can be a little weird. But let's take the A minor chord. Now let's add the flat 2. That's a cool chord. So we can do that with almost all of the bass notes. So you got major, let's put the 2 in the bass. I know you've heard that chord before, it sounds pretty jazzy. So now let's take the minor. Let's put the 2 in the bass. That's a cool chord too, it's very moody. Now let's take the 7 and put it in the bass. That's got a lot of tension, but it's still very usable. That's a flat 7 in the bass. We can add the 4th in the bass, like, all right, so we went through and we added the 3rd, right? If we add the 4, let's take A major and let's add a 4 in the bass. That sounds good, but there's no reason to call that a substitution. All that is a D major 7 chord. And so there's no reason to call it 1/4 when it really is just a D major 7 chord and you add an extra note in there. Major, then you have minor, and that doesn't always work as well, but the next one, that's got a lot of cool tension in it. Then you've got your flat 2. All right, so now let's do that on the next set of strings. You got D, D with E in the bass, D with C sharp in the bass, D with C in the bass, or major with a flat 7 in the bass, 7, 1. All right, There's the 2 in the bass of the minor chord. Here's the flat 2. That one doesn't work so well, but this one does. And as you experiment and you get free to move your fingers around and try different stuff, you're going to realize that you found chords that you never knew were possible, like this one. Or this one. Or this one. Accidents happen, and you will stumble upon stuff all the time. I still find new chords that I didn't know about. So, the next set of strings, major, 2 in the bass, flat, 7 in the bass, flat 7. All right? Minor, minor with the 2 in the bass. Now, one of the reasons why this chord works here and it didn't work so well down here is because there's so much tension in low strings. When you have that kind of stuff going on in the low range, low frequencies are so wide that it's hard for them to ring next to each other closely. But when you go up high, you can do stuff that you couldn't do low. That sounds a lot more normal then. Right? Okay. So we're at the G minor chord. We went through here, went to here, minor, and that chord's got a lot of tension, but I promise you, I use that chord a lot. When you put it in context of music, which we will do later, you will see that that is a very, very, very valuable voicing. Very valuable voicing. Imagine that. All right, a minor, 2 in the bass, flat 2 in the bass, starting to get the hang of it, right? We're just moving one note and leaving the other ones the same. All right, now the very next section that we're going to talk about is adding extensions. Right now we've talked about position, we've talked about inversion, which is the order in which the notes are in a chord. We've talked about the set of strings, and we've talked about substitutions, which is what bass note you choose to put in the chord. And we have not necessarily exhausted every option, but we've exhausted almost every option that you can really reach on a guitar. Now, extensions are different. Extensions are adding all of the rest of the notes in the chord besides the chromatic ones that we walk down to. You can walk up. You can add. So, those have numbers too. And those correspond to the scale that we went over. We talked about the major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Again, that's slow. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and again, 1. Now, we're going to add the notes that we can add in the second octave. We've got a whole scale up here, and all of the chromatic notes that we could possibly add into almost all of those chords. Almost any note can work as long as it's voiced the right way, and as long as you leave enough room for that tension to happen. What that means is, if you want to use a chord that's got a lot of tension, you want to spread it out. If you've got a If you're playing a chord where every note is a different note, then you want to give it space to breathe so that all those notes can ring. In here, where now I've got my finger barred, this note, and this note are each a fourth apart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then these two notes are a fourth apart. 1, 2, 3, 4. because those distances are so wide, that allows that chord to ring even though there's so much tension and every single note in there is different. It's almost like if you have a piano player and he's playing a block chord down here, he can voice it real close together, or he can separate his hands a little bit and get a really, really, really wide sounding chord. So we added, with everything that we went over so far, we've added 7s, 6s, we've added 4ths, 3rds, 2nds. Now we're going to add everything past the octave. So here's the first octave, here's the second octave. The first thing we can do is add 2. 1, 2. In the next octave, 1, 2. That 2 becomes 9. The reason why they call it 9 is so that when you see it on a chart, you know that they mean that they're adding it in the second octave. So you can add, there's a 2 or a 9. You can add a 4, which is 11 in the second octave. The reason why, let's imagine 1 was called a new number. Let's imagine 1 was called 8. After 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9 is 2. 3 is 10. 4 is 11. 5 is 12. 6 is 13. And all the way up. Now, the thing you can discard from what I told you is what you called the root note, the third, and the fifth. You don't have to refer to things by their even number anymore. What makes this part of number theory really easy is that you refer to everything by its odd number in the second octave. So you got 1, 9, 3, 11, 5, 13, 7, and 1 again. Those are all odd numbers. Those are all odd numbers. And that may sound like it's going to make it more complicated for you, but it really doesn't. It eliminates a lot of confusion. All it takes is a little memorization. 2 is 9, 4 is 11, and 6 is 13. 2 is 9, 4 is 11, 6 is 13. So let's add 9. And if you wanted to raise the 3 to 4, you can have flat 9 in there. You got 9, flat 9, and you still got your root note. There's a lot of tension in it. You can add the 11, which is also called a suspension. Whenever you raise 3 to 4, that is called suspending. And you can add 13. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 6 in the next octave, which is 13. You got 6, flat 6. That sounds kind of jazzy. That's usually where they use 13 and flat 13. You can have major 13. You remember our major chord, major 7 chord from earlier. You're adding 6 in the next octave, and that's called 13. Very, very lush, almost harp-like chord. This is a way to play a 9 chord on the next set of strings. You got 1, 5, 9, and then the third. I raised the 3 to 4, so that's a suspension. Flatted the 9. The reason why I didn't just flat the 9 is just because I don't really use that chord a whole lot. It exists, it's technically a chord, but I've never had a practical application for it. So I really don't know what to tell you other than you probably will never use it. So if we've got that, so we've got our 9s taken care of, we've got our 11s taken care of. Now we do our minor chords, add the 9. And the reason why, again, I'm going to stress it's 9, is because 2 is right here. So with this set of strings, you can add the 13. Easy way to do that is by just borrowing your finger. If you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you've got 13. So major 13, dominant 13. You can have minor. You can make it a minor with a 13. Minor major 7 with a 13. Minor 7 with a 13. And you can go and you can flat your 13. All right? So, the next set of strings, you cannot really add too much. The only thing you can do is suspend, raise the 3rd to 4 or 11. You can also make it a 9 chord. But to voice it with that 3rd and add in there is almost impossible. And so an easy way to just play the 9 chord is like this. All right? Pretty straightforward. I know we moved through those very quickly, so I'm going to review a little bit of that again for you. We're going to add a 9. You can add a 9 here. You can also add it over here. So we're going to put the 3rd, 1, 2, 3, right there. There's the root. And then there's the 9. I'm borrowing my index finger on the 4th fret behind there. So we got major add 9, major 7 add 9, dominant 7 add 9, major 6 add 9, and then major flat 6 add 9. So we just added 9ths on this set of strings. We're going to go and we're going to add 9ths here. This is what we went over earlier, just reviewing. There's 9. If you raise the 3 up a half step, you can flat the 9 and make it sound really good. When you go to the next set of strings, really the only way that you can add the 9 is that way or that way. So let's talk about 11s. You can have 11 and you can have sharp 11. The reason why, now one of the things that's going to make it easier to understand why I'm only referring to things in odd numbers is because it would be really confusing if I said flat 10 and sharp 9, because those are actually the same note. And there's no reason to have to do that. We can make this language as simple as possible. So if you've got a 9, you can have a sharp 9. And that is literally by making, you're taking the assumption that you have a major chord. When you raise a 9 up a half step, you're going to 3. Because 9 is 2, right? All right, so if we got 1, 2, you can have a flat 2, and you can have, in the next octave, a flat 9 or a sharp 9. The reason why you can have that there is because you can still have a major 3rd down here. 1, 2, 3. So here's a major 3rd. And here, and it sounds strange there. And it sounds a little hairy there too, but as soon as you bring it up to here, that's a chord that Hendrix used all the time. Sharp 9s sound great as long as you are high enough in the range. So that one even can work too, as long as you play it the right way. As long as you finger it to where the tension kind of goes by somebody without really noticing that you're doing that, you can make that chord sound really fat. The next section here, you got a 9 chord. Here's a dominant 9, flat 9, dominant 9 again, sharp 9. So this is dominant, sharp 9. Okay, on the next set of strings, you've got another dominant chord. Here's your dominant 9. And again, we're doing all this stuff from the 5th fret. You can move this anywhere around, but this is a good starting point. The frets are big enough for you to really actually get some exercise playing these chords, and they are small enough for you to be able to reach everything. If you tried to do most of these chords down here, you would not be able to do it. You got dominant, add 9. So you got root, 3rd, flat 7, which is dominant, as we learned in the first section, and 9. Flat 9, 9, sharp 9. Now we're going to talk about 11. 11, or 4, is 4 in the next octave. You can raise it simply by moving your middle finger up. You can play it this way. You can even add a lot of those notes from that first section. Now we're really getting into some tension. All of those chords sound awesome, and you can use them. I use that stuff all the time. That's how I make parts, is by adding different notes, and I'll drone a lot. Droning means by holding one position with a set of notes and moving bass notes around. And so I'll add a big cluster up here, and I'll move a bass note around, or I'll just stay out of the bass range completely and just add extra notes, like instead of having everybody's chords lay down like this, you can do this, do this. You can spread out. There's going to be keyboard players that are playing all these extra notes. There's going to be other guitar players that are trying to fill spots, and you have to find the place that makes sense if you want the gig. And depending on what style of music it is, sometimes all you're doing is playing one note. But by learning the system, you learn exactly why you're choosing to play that note, not just because it sounds good, but because it actually has a function in real music. When you play funk music, jazz music, Latin music, classical music, hip-hop music, metal music, they all have the same music theory. They may not all sound the same, but they're all using this exact same number system. So in the last section, we talked about 9ths and 11ths. Before that, we talked about 7ths, 6ths, and 3rds, 2nds, all of the stuff that was in the first octave. Now we're talking about 11ths, which is the next odd number after 9. You can almost think of it like an arpeggio. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, and 1 again. All right? So we've got, here's a basic 9 chord, and here's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is 11, we know that, right? So if we sharp it, which means to raise it a half step, it's right there. Those notes have a lot of tension. How do we alleviate that? You can put notes that fit with both of those notes that don't fit very well together with each other in the middle, and that will help smooth over somebody receiving it with their ears. To the untrained ear, tension can sound like a block of noise. And so when you want to add a note that's got a lot of tension, the way to get somebody to palate it is by finding common ground between those notes. This chord right here works on its own, and this chord here works on its own. And so to get from there to there, you can do that. All right? Pretty easy. So that's, you have 11. You got sharp 11. That's an awesome chord. So what I'm doing is I'm going down that same system I went through before, but I'm just keeping that sharp 11 droned at the top. So you find a lot of stuff that works. All right, so now the next set of strings. You got a major chord here, right? In order to make it suspended, you raise the third. And I know those stretches are big, and that's why you need to stretch before you go and try to do this stuff. All right, so now let's add sharp 11. We're going to do the same thing we did here. We added a 9 chord to make that more palatable. We're going to do the same thing. That's a beautiful chord. You can even borrow your finger and add their possibilities are just endless. So you've got one more set of strings. There's the sharp 11. There's the 11. All right. Now we're going to do 13s, and then we'll be almost done. All right. And before we get there, I want to reiterate this. This is how we came up with all these notes. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 1. Now we're going to do 13s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's in the second octave, so we call it 13. 13, major 7, add 13. Dominant 13, and then you can add the 6, but really if you're going to use a 13, it's cool to use it with tension, and so there's no real reason to just double that 6 unless it's just something that you find works really well for the part that you're writing for a particular song. I would never play that chord. I wouldn't put a flat 6 and a regular 13 because it just kind of sounds strange. The next set of strings, or excuse me, before we go on, you can flat the 13. All right? It's 6. And so in light of that, if you raised it, all it would be is a flat 7. And so there's no need to try to sharp a 13. That doesn't happen. You just call that a flat 7. All right. So we've got major 13, flat 13. And although that chord sounds really weird, I've heard people play it. I've seen people use that on gigs. It's major 7, add flat 13. Dominant flat 13. That's a chord I use all the time. You can use it. It sounds like music when you do it like that. It's like a passing tone. All right. So now we'll do minors. Minor 13. Minor flat 13, that's a cool chord. I've heard Radiohead use that chord a lot. And the rest of the strings, the rest of the sets of strings, you can't add a 13 because your fingers just don't reach that far and there's not enough strings left over. So we're nearing the end of this. Now, the only other chords that we have not gone over up until this point are diminished, half diminished, and augmented. You're saying, oh God, more chords. These don't have a bunch of inversions like the other ones do. So they're really easy to remember. If you invert them, it's just the same inversion because they're built off of the same distance over and over and over again. Diminished is based off of minor thirds, and augmented is based off of major thirds. So here's diminished. Here's half diminished. Here's diminished. Here's half diminished. And here is diminished. Here's half diminished. What's the difference between diminished and half diminished? The main difference is their function in the rest of the scales. Let's say you've got a set of chords in the key of G. All right, this is our key. You've got C, major 7. You want to raise it, raise just the root note. You have raised C to C sharp, and you've left the rest of the chord the same. Well, the top part of the chord has got a little parallel fourth in there, B and E. And so there's a nice tension in there, but there's not too much. Now, when you go up to, in the key of G, and you raise the root note up a half step, then you get a fully diminished chord. And the difference between this chord and this chord in their spelling, in their distances, is that this one doesn't have that parallel fourth. It's got a tritone here and a tritone here. A tritone is a flat 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Flat 5. And it sounds pretty funky down there, and with some distortion can sound really cool. But up here, it sounds like music if you add it in conjunction with the other chords that make sense in that key. 4, sharp 4 half diminished, 5, sharp 5 half diminished, 6. It's cool. And yeah, one more time, we've got half diminished, fully diminished, half diminished, fully diminished, and half diminished, fully diminished. Now the only thing left is augmented. Augmented is based on major thirds and then eventually a minor third. It's a really strange thing. It's based off the whole tone scale, which is such a weird scale. But every other note in the whole tone scale adds up. That's a major set of major thirds after major thirds, and then they throw that minor third in there for good measure. I don't know why, but I sure do like to play that chord. It's almost like the James Bond chord. I know you've heard it. It's got a lot of tension, very moody. On the next set of strings, it's right there. On the next set of strings, excuse me, there it is. All right. First set of strings, augmented, augmented, then augmented. All right? Pretend you didn't see my thumb hanging out over there. You've got 2 in the bass, minor, minor major 7 with a sharp 11. So this chord is minor major 7, add sharp 11 over 2. Or depending on where you're at in the scale, it could be a different bass note. Like, for instance, now is where I'm going to start to show you how to really apply this stuff. Let's say that the key of the song is E, all right? So this is our key, E. We've got 4 is A, 5 is B, and 1 is E. So A is 4. We're going to put 5 in the bass. So 4 over 5, then 4 minor over 5, 4 minor major 7, add sharp 11 over 5. Then 5 dominant flat 13, 1 major 7, add 9. Now every single one of those chords you learned earlier, and as you repeat those examples, you will see that those chords you learned in a certain way, and now you're going to put them into real music. So I'm going to play those chords back again quicker so you can hear what's happening, because there's a cool chromatic line that happens. You got 4 over 5, 4 minor over 5, 4 minor major 7, add sharp 11 over 5, 5 dominant flat 13, 1 major 7, add 9. That's what happened. You had, which is really cool. We took a bass note that never moved, added a line that moved on the top, and had some really cool tension in the middle of the chord. All right. So now let's talk about adding chords together and taking them out of that system that kind of sounded like music but didn't really get it done for you. You got, let's take E major. So here's a kind of guitar chord melody-ish thing that I put together where you can see a lot of these chords in action. All right. Now, let's talk about some piano player stuff. Piano players have carte blanche to do whatever they want with music because they have all the room in the world and 10 fingers to do it with. So when I want to sound like a piano player, I've pretty much either got to throw away the lower half or the top half. Usually, to get across a piano player voicing, you got to throw the bottom away and just let the bass player or another guitar player take care of that chord. But that one section is really what I want to talk about. I've got, this is a B minor chord. You've got 9, 3, 13, and 9 again. E minor with a natural 13. A minor, the same voicing as this one. Tension there, but in context of the music, that chord just kills me. That chord's got so much tension. That's on E flat, and then you've got the flat 5 and a major 7. Cool. I'm going to go slow through each one of those examples so that you can learn how to play along with that. right, cool. Now I'm going to show you a chord melody that is based around the B section of a famous jazz tune called Autumn Leaves. I'll do that real slow. All right, so this last example I want to give you of the chords that you learned in real music is Rock With You by Michael Jackson. So the chorus has got got minor 7, 4 over 5, 5 over 6, 6 minor 7, excuse me, 2 minor 7, 4 over 5, 5 over 6, and then the only other chord is dominant and 5 suspended, add 13, add 9, unsuspended. All right, so again, slow. You can go anywhere you want with this stuff. I'm Will Booz, and this has been the Chord Theory Masterclass. Thank you for taking the time to go through this information. I look forward to speaking with you and seeing you. Anytime you have a question, please feel free to email me. I look forward to hearing from you. Have a great day.